Okay, so now I want to talk a little bit about specifically types of religious organizations. We talked briefly about how they work together or interplay with kinship organizations or political organization and the overlap there a little bit. But what I want to do now, and this follows closely with the textbook, is talk about 5 different types of religious organizations. And as your book points out, and I want to reiterate that here, these are categories developed by Wallace, who we just learned about a few videos back. And during his time, when he's creating these categories, he's coming from an evolutionary perspective as well. So he's thinking about simple to complex, he's thinking about putting religions in order, and so that's where we get these 5 different types of religions. Okay, remember, we're not placing religions into categories based on complexity or making value judgments about those religions, but these different terms here do help us categorize religions, and all are complex, so sometimes your book will mention that one is most complex or more complex than others. Just keep in mind, and this can be hard to do, that that is not a value judgment. That isn't saying one is better or that more complexity is better or that it indicates any kind of difference in intellectual capability of the members of those religions. It's just a way to think about the religion, and it's kind of closely linked to political organization as well. And so I just want you to keep in mind that these aren't value judgments, and we're not thinking that one of these is better than the other, or that cultures are going to develop through, or religions will develop through these different types of religion. Okay, so we want to just also briefly mention that Wallace uses the term cult. This was a non-judgmental term that meant a group that has its own set of beliefs, practices, and rituals. Now the term cult has taken on a very negative connotation, and so when you're reading in your text or you're watching the videos and I use or your book uses the term cult, we're not referring to a cult in the judgmental negative term. We're just referring to any specific religious group that has its own unique beliefs, practices, and rituals. Okay? And I'm going to go over these pretty briefly, and then in your textbook there's a good bit more information, so be sure you are reading the text as well, as always. Okay, so an individualistic cult, you have no specialists, so everyone is their own specialist. You don't necessarily have a leader or someone who is interpreting a religious text. Everyone kind of leads their own religious story, and they're all their own specialists, or you can think about it as being no specialists. Next would be a shamanistic cult. So in this one you've got part-time specialists, which we refer to as shamans, and those people are interacting with the spirit world on behalf of, your book calls them clients, but other members of the religious group or other members of the community. Okay. Communal cults then are groups of ordinary people who are conducting religious ceremonies for the well-being of the whole community. And then you have ecclesiastical cults. These are going to be the most complex, and these are going to be full-time clergy. So this would refer to Christian religions in the U.S. or Western Christian religions, where you have full-time clergy who are interpreting texts and who are teaching the religion all the time. That is their full-time job. They're very highly specialized. And so then we want to talk briefly about rites of passage and rites of solidarity. And these are 2 types of ceremonies that occur across a lot of different religious organizations, but your book focuses most heavily on their role within communal cults, but you can also see them occurring in other types of religious organizations. So a rite of passage is a ceremony that's going to help celebrate the transition of someone from one social status to another. And this happens across a lot of different cultures, but it happens in the same way. So we see separation, transition, and then incorporation. And basically what that means is that the person or group of people who are going through this rite of passage are first separated from the rest of the community, either physically, which can occur, or just symbolically. So removing them from their current social status or social group, and then they're in a period of transition. And oftentimes this period of transition represents kind of a dangerous time for a person. They're in between social statuses or places in their life or age groups. And so it's kind of a dangerous time period. And so that's represented through trials. So in some cultures, they'll make gloves out of fire ants. And so, well, they're made out of like palm leaves, so they're woven, but then there's a bunch of fire ants inside. And you have to have your hands inside of the mitts for X amount of time. And you can't make any noise, but the whole time you're being stung by fire ants. And so this type of transition phase is a testing phase. It's representing the danger and the transition from one social status to another. And then once you've completed this rite, this transition phase, then you'll move into the incorporation phase, where then you are reincorporated back into your new social group or into that existing social group that you are now a part of. Okay, and so when we see rites of passage occurring, whether they're occurring in small-scale societies, large societies, in small religions, or extremely complex religions, they're happening in the same way. So this theory has been proven through ethnographic data and research time and time again that rites of passage are going to occur in 3 stages: separation, transition, then incorporation. Then we also see rites of solidarity, and these are a little bit different, but still a ceremony. But we're doing these things to enhance social integration among a group of people. So to keep the group of people solid and a solidified organization. Okay, and your book gives the example of sacrificing a goat, and that is kind of, you're sacrificing it to ancestors or ancestor gods, and that keeps the community in a kind of solid, cohesive unit. So 2 different types of rites of passage that we see cross-culturally and through a lot of different religious aspects. Most often you'll hear about rites of passage, but also keep in mind rites of solidarity as well.